Fortunate for you, the draft doesn't end with the first round. A whole weekend full of draft picks. What do the Jaguars go get? I'll tell you in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, your host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Quick reminder, we are free on the YouTube page to subscribe to the Locked On Jaguars YouTube page, and make sure wherever you get your audio podcast, you tap in every single day to make sure that you do not miss an episode. You don't want to miss a show, man. Who would want to miss a show with me on there? Nobody, right? Yeah. Today's show is also brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On, all caps, in the game. Get in the game with me here on Locked On Jaguars. What is going on? Anton Harrison met with the media and spoke to the media. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Talked about coaching, talked about when he met the Jaguars, and the Jaguars talked about when they met him and how he's just such a fit. Shad Khan was there, Trent Baalke, Doug Peterson, and of course the man of the hour from the DMV. Just talked about football, his love of football, basketball, Oreo ice cream, all of that stuff. And they really like his setup. I can't describe it. Usually when you use the word setup, you're talking about fighting or boxing. They just like the way he's put together. They like how he carries himself. They like the way he talks, and he fits the culture. So that's why I think this is an extremely good pick by the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was some people might want to call it safe, but I just believe that it was a very, very good choice by the Jags, and it helped sort of fortify the protection around Trevor Lawrence and help the needs. Now, most people think the draft, sometimes they don't think, but they act like the draft ends on day one. If that's the case, the Jags would not have stellar play out of guys like Tyson Campbell. They also would not have good play out of Luke Fortner or Andre Sisco. And you can go all the way through. Devon Hamilton just signed an extension a couple of days ago. He was a third rounder. So the draft is not over, and the Jaguars, by moving back, got a plethora of extra choices. They did not go into the draft with a fifth-round pick. They have one now. They have 3 fourth-round selections and 3 sixth-round selections. So what I think is going to happen is if they got to use them, they'll use them. If they still, on day 3, have a whole bunch of picks, you know what I'd do? I'd sell them off. I'd sell a lot of them off. I might keep 1 or 2. But if I go into day 3 with 7 draft choices, 3 of them are going to teams that don't have very many picks, a la Miami, and I'm going to ask for a round earlier in next year's draft. That's just what I'm doing. If I give you a 5th, I want a 4th and 24. If I give you a 6th, I want a 5th and 24. If I give you a 7th, I want a 6th and 24, because the 24th draft will have a lot of value when it comes to what these picks and what that currency will be worth. But what are they going to add to the team? Give you some names today. I'll tell you what I believe the outlook is, and then we'll lead you into how we're going to go back and review the entire thing on Monday when we come back off the weekend. And then on Tuesday, we're going to start focusing on the secondary free agency market, and talk about the things that the Jacksonville Jaguars need to do before the start of the season and how they can get that done. But right now, the Jaguars, they pick as of now, today, they pick 56th and 88th, right? Could they come up? Sure. If they came up, who would I want it to be? Joey Porter Jr. If they come up. That's the guy I think they need to go after. I just imagine him with that 6'2.5" frame, with that physicality on the opposite side of Tyson Campbell. That's one name that I think you need to look for because they still need a guy who can play corner long term. They also need a guy who can come in and play a little bit of slot. And I saw some tape where Jerry Porter Jr. or Joey Porter Jr. lined up in the slot, and I think he'd be a pretty good slot guy off the rip. And then he could also blitz from those tight formations because of his size and his ability to get there. So he'd be the biggest corner they've had, I believe, since Jalen Ramsey. Yeah, he'd be the biggest corner, and he's bigger than Jalen, actually. I think he's longer. So that would be one of the things that I'm interested in. Would I go back with all of those picks? Would I touch that offensive line again? If you see a guy on the board that you really like, the thing is, though, if they're going to strike big inside, it has to be in round 2, maybe in round 3 if they move up. But that thing starts to thin out real quickly when you talk about getting into round 4 and you talk about those interior players on the offensive line. It really starts to thin out really fast. So if the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to attack the offensive line and go ahead and add another nice little depth piece, it should come from somebody inside, and it's got to be earlier than later. I asked Trent Baalke last night, was it just the talent, or was it about making sure you got something now that you know you won't be able to get later because those positions thin out? He kind of agreed. We would be saying, because that's where you get yourself in trouble. And I'm quoting when he says, that's where you get yourself in trouble. You get yourself in trouble when you start realizing that positions are thin and you need people like that. So you elevate guys based on need, even though they're not worthy of being picked talent-wise where they are. So I do think that there was something to that. Why go offensive tackle? Because there was a run on offensive tackles. You do that because you can address your other needs later. There wasn't this huge run on edge. There was a nice run. I think edge was the amount of people that got drafted as edge rushers was expected. There's some guys on the board still, Keon White, Derek Hall, guys like that I really, really like. I like Hall a lot better. BJ Ojolari, even though I think they say he has short arms or something like that and doesn't really move as well laterally. But there are a lot of other players where you can really touch the defensive line, cornerback, offensive line, and maybe even add a tight end or a receiver for Trevor Lawrence. We'll continue to talk about it, discuss what we expect to see today, why we expect to see it, the importance, what are the needs, how have the needs changed any for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll discuss all that here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. After I let you know that today's sponsor and the sponsor for today's show is Ultimate Football GM. You all have heard me talk about the mobile game app. And if you ever thought you'd make a good GM, you got to give this game a try. It's not as easy as you might think to create a dynasty. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory trying to build a dynasty. I had so much fun on the airplane playing it. I was in airplane mode. You play it offline. I had so much fun playing it. I was disappointed when we had to deplane and I had to cut it off real quick. But never fret or fear, because wherever you stop, you can pick up right at that point and play it. You can play it a little bit every day. You can play it all day. You can go through 3 seasons in one day if you want, however you decide to do it. But you're going to have to hire the right coaches and coordinators. You're going to have to handle the training budget, the scouting budget, building a stadium, what ticket prices are. You got to do everything that people who run a franchise do. Locked On Jaguars listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On, all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. You can start your day here with me every single day on Locked On Jaguars, man, because it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. We also want to give a quick shout out and a quick thanks to the everydayers. That's right. Guys that watch, guys and ladies that watch our show every single day. Man, you are the cold hard truth and you're the reason why. Shout out to anybody who's a new listener also, because we keep getting them every day. At least according to our numbers, there are new people coming in every day. And once you come back twice, that means you're an everydayer also. What you can do also is join Kyle Krabs, Joe Marino, and other Locked On NFL local experts for live NFL draft coverage presented by Ultimate Football GM. Kyle and Joe will give live coverage of rounds 2 and 3 beginning at 6:30 Eastern Time tonight on YouTube on the Locked On NFL scouting page. Tomorrow, they'll get you caught up live after each round starting at 11:30 Eastern Time. So subscribe to Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes to get notified when they go live. Something quick here. There were some players that did not go early that I have said in previous podcasts, man, I'm trying to find it, but I just don't see it. One of them was Brian Branch, who I actually highlighted last week as the Jaguars finding their man, because there was an unofficial sort of consensus that that's the person that I saw, at least on social media, and in the mocks that most people were putting up, most fans were putting up. Brian Branch was that guy. Maybe the Jaguars do like him. He's still on the board. I want to see, as an exercise, just how far he falls, because the scouts kind of agree with me in that respect. Like, I went looking for it all the time, and I didn't get it. I didn't get why I saw people mocking him to 13 and 14 and 15. I just never got it. And I'm trying to, and I really wasn't trying to be a part or trying to be different from other people. I was just really trying to say and see, let me see what it's all about. I'm not saying he's bad, but there were folks talking about top 15, and I just never got it. Same with Will Levis. I tried. I saw the build and I saw the frame. There are a lot of guys built like that. There are a lot of guys, well, not quite, but you know what I mean. It's not a bodybuilding contest. It's not a beauty body contest. It's not a swimsuit fit contest or anything. It's football, right? I watched his games. I just didn't see it. I saw something, but it wasn't like he was going to be the number one pick. I didn't care much for what I saw from Anthony Richardson, but being in this area, you really, really get a sense and understand of some of the difficulties that he may have had, and the new system, old system, and perhaps some coaching. Once Brian Johnson left Florida, it wasn't the same for him. Therefore, I did see that wow factor and that marvelous talent that made me say, okay, I kind of get why people want him. Because I had told somebody earlier in the year he wasn't going to get picked, right? Especially in the first round. And I got that text too. I thought you told me what? I said, yeah, he won the process, and people are always going to fall in love with traits. So speaking of traits, who are some of the guys left right now in the draft? The Jaguars have I think they have 12 picks. I think they ended up with 13 or maybe 12. However many they got a lot, and they're active, and they're up, and they're outside. That's the word that young people use. Jaguars going to be outside today, right? I'm thinking and hoping they have identified a sweet spot, and they're going to get there, whether it's before where they're picking now, whether they move up, depending on the players, depending on the way the board shakes. So if you notice yesterday, their proverbial sweet spot went backwards. That's why they didn't make the picks right away. They went back, and it was only, mind you, it was two going back twice, but only 4 spots. But still, that means that there was a shift in the guys that they prioritized, so they came backwards. As the draft goes along, I wonder if that little shift turns into a big shift. If these runs that I anticipate are going to happen, if that turns into them really, really, really wanting to come up and be very, very aggressive and come up and get a few people. Now, there are a lot of my favorites, like Luke Musgrave. Luke Musgrave is a personal wig favorite. For team building purposes, Luke Musgrave does a lot of the things that Evan Ingram does, right? So if you're going to get into 12 personnel where it's 1 back and 2 tight ends, you don't necessarily need 2 guys to do the same things. You need 1 guy to be able to do something a little bit different. And that's why Sam Laporta is on my mind a little bit, because Luke Musgrave is like secretariat. He's like this beautiful um, thoroughbred that knows how to get down the seams and make these highly contested catches. Sam Laporta is rugged. Sam Laporta is the dude that will, you working at the plant, he'll whoop you at lunch break. He runs violently. He blocks. He plays with a certain physicality. Musgrave is better for me, but I think for the Jaguars, Laporta might be better for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm not a big Mayer fan, and you notice I'm talking about tight ends because that's another need. That we talked about Derek Hall and all those guys at edge. Now we're talking about tight ends. That's another need. We've also mentioned Joey Porter Jr. That's another player that would make an absolute lot of sense for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'll talk about some surprise positions, some guys that you might think the Jaguars don't need them, but they might find value in just one or two things that they do well that lead to touchdowns and points being scored. I'll tell you what all of those things are and who those players are in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars after I tell you about Built. That's right. Built bars and Built puffs. They are so delicious and they taste amazing and they're healthy and they're made with 100% dark chocolate and it's real chocolate. That's what makes it good, man, along with the fact that the macros are off the chain. 130 calories, about 4 grams of sugar. But check this out for all of the gym rats, a whopping 17 grams of protein. And for a long time, I've told you, you go to built.com and you still can because they have great information, introducing new flavors all the time, and they'll drop like Michael Jordan dropped sneakers, okay? I'm telling you, make sure you still check in at Built. But if you've already had them and you crave them and you want them right now and you don't want to wait, find your local Walmart. Go in Walmart, go near the pharmacy section and get you a 4-bar box, or go to Sam's Club. You go in Sam's Club, you can be greedy like me and get you a 13-bar box of Built Bar. That's right. Walmart, Sam's, and if you have some patience, if you already have some, you want to try something different, go to built.com. Make sure you get you some Built Bars. All right, we're going to run it down here and talk about maybe some surprise players to watch throughout the weekend. At the time I'm recording this, there's a couple of hours left to go before the action on day 2 gets started. Remember, day 2 is second round and third round, and then day 3 is 4 through 7. There are a lot of good football players, right? There's a high degree of hit and miss in the first round. But second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, there are a lot of really, really good football players. Guys that were 5-star recruits in high school, some guys that weren't. There were guys last night that went in the first round that weren't 5-star recruits. So what positions and then what players coincide with those positions could the Jaguars decide that they're going to touch? How about just a little bit of a hybrid player who can play some slot but who plays safety and is just really just like he plays like his feet are on fire? Sidney Brown. Is Sidney Brown one of those guys that you think the Jaguars might take a chance because he's a player who tackles, he can cover, and the most important thing is he gets active and he is somebody who always finds himself right in the middle of whatever's going on. He's very opportunistic. Ball's bouncing his way, he's catching it. So I would prefer a guy like that over a guy like Jamie Robinson, who played at Florida State, where I support. And I think they're both going to be really, really good players. I just think Brown probably covers a little bit more ground, is a little bit more fast, and is a little bit more opportunistic. That's something that you need to watch out for. Do they address wide receiver, even though they have their top 3 wide receivers already on the team with Zay Jones, Calvin Ridley, and, of course, Christian Kirk? I think they could. If you look at that group, Zay Jones kind of goes up and he high points balls, and Calvin Ridley, all of them do it. But what about the big body? What about a guy with a catch radius who can kind of create a little room for himself? What if they go for Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss or Cedric Tillman of Tennessee? Coaches always rave about their rooms and what the rooms look like and the versatility in the rooms, and that everybody shouldn't look the same. So what if the Jaguars decide to go that route and have a guy on the roster who is that guy, a red zone target, a guy that you can throw the ball to on first down and keep the chains moving? I think that's also a very good deal for Jacksonville if they did that. I love tight end. Like I said, I want them to touch more on the offensive line, wide receiver, and running back. Even though they signed a running back in the offseason, Johnson, who I last saw play with Cleveland. And then they re-signed Jermichael Hasty, and they have Snoop Connor. What if you get another guy that can give you a little something, right? And who can be the eventual replacement for Jamal Agnew? Now, we ain't trying to run Agnew out. We love Jamal Agnew, but what if he's a guy who can be a potential replacement for Jamal Agnew, whose contract does expire after this year? What if it's somebody like Devin Achane, who can return kicks, maybe not punts, but is a kick returner and is a hell of a third down back with a lot of home run ability, and a track star coming out of Texas A&M? I think it all works. I absolutely think it all works, and it might be something that they look at. How about Tajay Spears? Tajay Spears, very quick, very sudden, is one of those guys. He kind of reminds you of one of those guys that would probably play in Philadelphia and be a part of their three-back rotation, or end up in Kansas City. And I hate to say it, but I just did. So, yeah, running back is something that they also might touch. So everything is up everything's up to take a look at. They need, I think, the fortify edge. If they get there and there's just some big kid, some big, strong, massive kid, even though they have Foye Oluokun, and even though they have, not Foye Oluokun, Foley Fatukasi, even if they have him and Devon Hamilton, you can never have enough big people. You cannot have enough big people and enough defensive linemen because of the threat of attrition and injury. It's going to be very, very interesting. Go ahead and tell me who in the comments you like them to pick up this weekend realistically, that have not been picked up or have not been drafted. And tell me where you think the Jaguars are and how they did. And we'll go over all of that Monday when we all get back together and return from our lovely, lovely weekend. Now, make sure you check out the live NFL Draft Hangout show starting today at 6:30. Also, make sure you get ready and get prepared to discuss the draft in its entirety. We might try to rank them a little bit and see if the Jaguars filled their needs. How did they do based on what you knew about them coming in? And then on Tuesday, we'll look at the second phase of free agency and see if there's a gap in there somewhere where the Jaguars can absolutely fill that gap with a veteran. Till then, you guys take care of each other, and we'll see you the next time here on Locked On Jaguars.